And here comes Monologue 1. I knew this guy named Dan. That isn't how most people knew him. Most people called him the Emperor. I didn't know why. He wasn't an especially tough guy, he didn't have a following, but he had something. One day he tells me, if I had 2 solid months, I could get through an AC course and with no problem. I thought he just didn't know, and I probably shook my head. But he did it. When he said he could, we both knew he didn't have the time or money to give it the test. But he got it together somehow, and he did it. I had a lot of respect for him after that. Well, years and years later, he's a state senator, and I come up to him in the legislative halls, because I'm no mean person myself, plus his friend. And I got it right either way. I say, Dan, you know I always been in back of you. He says, psh, bravo. What about the time I was getting it together for the jetty? One small speck in a whirl of projects in both of our lives. But he remembered it, and he meant it too. He meant it, but still, he was only busting my chops. I said, you know how much stuff was going on back then. Thank God the Emperor can tap a bunch of people and doesn't always need Bravo to score. But I've been solid for you all over the place, and you know that. I mean, the Emperor turned out not to be such a bad nick for Dan after all, after seeing the way things turned out. Like now, I had this pastor, and he was tipped by someone who knew Dan in the school days. Not well enough to call him a friend, but well enough to call him the Emperor just as naturally as any of us. You see, the folks who gave him this honor, you'd think they'd actually follow his words or something. But the truth is, they were just watching him. Weren't going to do nothing until they saw him pull something off. Well, that's how I suppose it goes. But sometimes something that sounds just like, of course, like it'd be true all the time, it just stands out. Like if you'd have seen how it was gonna happen, you wouldn't have been so panty-ante about betting on the guy. Still, there was some reason they called him the Emperor. I think about both sides of that over and over again, trying to get the clue. I was better than penny ante. I was in for $1. $1 here, $1 there. I suppose it added up. Around the time people normally start drinking, he started. I started. You know, when it was around. He decided he didn't like beer and wine, and he wasn't going any further. And so I said, hell, I don't need it either. Yeah, stuff like that. 30 years later, it sounds pretty big, but at the time it was like, in for another $1. Hell, 50 cents. It didn't mean we were tight, just, yeah, the guy's right. But you know, 30 years later, and I'm still Dan's friend, right? Now, the friend of an important guy, and a busy guy, it's a different kind of friendship. And I suppose that's how it was even in school, and the whole time before he made his mark. I never felt he needed me particularly. Never felt that I needed him for that matter, like as a bowling buddy or a co-volunteer, or like we had to belong to the same church or circle of friends or some such. But some guys I saw as tight friends with each other, who I knew were, I saw drift apart over the years, despite goodwill. For about a half dozen of us, that didn't happen around Dan. He was always coming up with projects and tapping one or another of us, so you never really needed to be tight like school tight. You just needed to be orbiting in the same area. Dan was in orbit too. He wasn't the center. He was just a lot closer to it. So anyway, we're in the legislative hall, and I'm no mean person myself, remember? And I say, look, Dan, there's this church Ted Buell is a member of. Geez, Ted, he says, what's he been doing? Insurance. Why not? Anyway, the pastor in this church, he's dedicating an employment skills center. He's trying to get a couple of reps to the dedication through interfaith, which should be an easy sell. He thinks if you were at the dedication, it would add heft. He says, You talked to him yourself? Of course. Dan laughed. He didn't say heft. You did. What did he say? Well, I chuckled. It would add prominence to the occasion. Where's the place? 17th and Coward. Whew. Yeah? Church is on 17th near Sterling. Yeah, well, from there they could see where the need was. What's the name of the church? Church of Christ of the Restoration. Yeah, well, I'll send Benny with you to find out more about it. I'll let Benny know what I want to know. You contact Benny tonight. He'll be expecting you. Let the pastor know... what's the pastor's name? Gottlieb Scheiner. Dan chuckled. Yeah? So, what's your impression? Oh, definite do-gooder. About 10 years younger than us. Wasn't raised poor. The place is typical contemporary, not morose. Man of God? Man of Jesus? Yeah, okay. You let him know I'm proud he's helping the struggling, and you want to come by with one of my people for due diligence. That's the Emperor.